It's the Fantasy Sanctuary. It's Monday, which means, of course, it is the Best Ball Show with myself and Tyler. But most importantly, we are joined by a very special guest, one of our favorite people in the fantasy football and best ball industry, Rob Coakley of SpikeWeek.com. Rob, how you doing, dude?
It's pretty much perfect to be here with both of you because I have an emo cowboy over me on the left side, which is up here. And I have Captain Tom, which people might not know. Captain Tom, he voiced a opening ghost story for me a couple months back where he was the captain of a ship from England. So it was pretty cool to get him out of his comfort zone for that.
I mean, that was really enjoyable for me because as somebody who works in television and normally gets to bitch and moan about people doing piss poor voiceovers, now I got to send that piss poor voiceover to yourself.
Hey, it was great, and Jesse always makes everything sound great with his background music, so it was well done on all accounts.
Yeah, you guys are killing it, not only on Spike Week, but with all the ghost story stuff that you're doing. It's an incredibly entertaining channel. But we are here to talk best ball, and we are here to draft in Best Ball Mania, which we'll be getting into shortly. It'll be a 30-second pick for anybody who wants to lurk and be ready to jump in with us. But before we came on, Rob, you told us that you haven't drafted a single Best Ball Mania team so far. What's the kind of reason that you've left one of the contests which people see as like the premier contest alone completely?
Well, I don't think it's the premier contest this year, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a fine contest, like it's okay, but I think that if you take all accounting into, just account for everything, I think that the site overall has sort of dropped the ball a bit over the last year and a half. And I think that DraftKings and I think that drafters have sort of stepped up their games over the last year and a half. I enjoy the interfaces on those two a little bit more, which I think is crazy to say about DK after how that launched a couple years back. And I think that the fact that I have to click 8 buttons to even get into a draft or sweat a team on Underdog is not great. They still offer some really fun contests. They have the best selection around, but overall I'm sticking to some of their lower limit stuff over there and to their single entry stuff on Underdog for now.
Is it kind of one of those situations where with BBM you see it as a contest where if you're not going to throw 100, 150 entries at it, it's just less appealing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I'll probably have 50 entries into that is my guess. But it's just not a priority. And I think that if I do, I mean, all three of the big contests are tough, right? Like you're just talking about the flagship
lotteries.
contest. Yeah, just basic lotteries. And I think that if we're going to play those, we have to play those a specific way, which is what I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, shooting for 1% outcomes and stuff to that nature. But overall, I think some of the underdog tribalism drives me insane too. So like that is another thing that I'm pushing back on a little bit this year. So maybe I'll make myself the villain in the best ball community by saying that.
Another deal. Yes.
I think it's fair, and I think there's definitely some people who carry a little too much water. It's like, if you're a paying customer, you deserve to voice your opinions and have them heard, and at least Underdog listen. Whereas, like, look, we've banged on about things like DraftKings. I spent a lot of time and money drafting on there, and try to get an answer from just about anyone was really difficult there. Yep. Drafters obviously do what they do, but they're probably not the best in terms of contest selection and other stuff, and it's all quite the same. FFPC are just so, this is what we do every year, and this is what we're going to keep on doing. So yeah, I mean, I definitely understand. I don't think I've ever seen as much discourse around Underdog as we have this year, but today's been a good day. Fun new contest which launched. Myself and Tyler have jumped in a bunch of slows that we're going to be drafting between them. But getting back to the lottery talk, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on now was because you had a great video that you put out on your channel talking about like 1% outcomes in best ball and why we should be shooting for them. And the video is excellent. It's in the description down below. Anyone who's not watched it should go and spend 10 minutes watching it after this show. But in it, you kind of talked about like shifting mindset. And what do you think is like the biggest barrier to people being able to build teams for those 1% outcomes.
I think this year is worse than any year I've seen in the past. And I think people are taking what happened the previous year and applying the wrong lessons to it. And I think it's really happening this year more so than anything. So one of the biggest lessons that I see people gravitate towards is, I mean, it was the talk all of last year. It's the Saquon Barkley thing, right? Like Saquon Barkley, you had to have Saquon Barkley, you had to have Saquon Barkley. That's true in cumulative scoring. You absolutely had to have Saquon Barkley in cumulative scoring. Do you guys think that Saquon Barkley was a great pick for
No.
these other tournaments?
No, because when he got to the playoffs, he shit the bed, really. Not massively so, but he didn't help you.
He
And
absolutely
Jonathan,
tanked week 15.
Yeah.
He was somewhere between running back 26 and 50. So he absolutely destroyed a bunch of teams that way. And let me ask you guys have you heard anybody talk about Jonathan Taylor from last year at all?
Well, I've had my own problems with Jonathan Taylor because I find him a difficult click because he scored 42% of his fantasy points in the last 2 weeks of the fantasy season, which is fantastic for best ball if you can sneak him through, as the winner of BBM did, the winner of various other contests. But it definitely wasn't a high advance rate player. So is that the kind of thing that you're looking for? Are you looking to try and take the lesson from that and turn it into, I want unique ownerships, I want players that other people are fading, or how can we turn that into an advantage?
So I think that our advantage from last year is, I'm not saying that you should have exclusively drafted Jonathan Taylor over Saquon Barkley or vice versa. What I'm saying is you should have, if you were going to draft these guys, I think that all of us are very well versed in zero RB drafting, hero RB drafting. But I think that is a lot of the best ball community as a whole. And I think that our edge is being able to draft better zero RB, hero RB, dual RB teams, however you want to slice it. And my problem last year was I didn't draft either of them. When what I should have been doing, and I still had a really good advance rate, but it was my worst best ball year ever because I still crapped out in the playoffs. But I think my lesson is, it wasn't that I should have drafted Barkley or I should have drafted Taylor. It's that I should have drafted them, and then I should have gotten them more unique in these big lottery contests. And it's so easy to do. It is the easiest thing in the world to do, to get a unique team. I mean, it's a little bit easier with the spike week tools because we have projected ownership and stuff like that on combo ownerships with first and second round picks. So it makes that a little bit easier. But if you just use your brain for 4 seconds and you scroll down 6 or 7 picks after taking your 106 or 107 or 212 or whatever, you can get a variation of a guy that's probably on the same tier as who you would normally draft him with, except he's getting drafted 18 or 19% with this guy, and you can get him with 2% or 1% with another guy. I mean, I started a team, this was on drafters, but I started a team, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, and Marvin Harrison, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Sounds pretty normal, right? Like everyone, like probably people have that in their portfolio. Hadn't been drafted yet this year. This was 3 nights ago.
Right.
Those are first, second, third round picks, right? Roughly. So I pulled Brian Thomas up just like 6 picks, and I was able to just get what seemed like a standard team that nobody else has. And if you're playing in a lottery, I mean, how powerful is that?
Yeah. And Tyler, I'm definitely intrigued to hear your thoughts on this. But like, one of the things I noticed when I was comparing ADP data from this year to last year was that from the same sources, there's more players on Underdog who have an ADP this year than they do last year. And that's because more players are consistently getting drafted at the back end more. Tyler, are you seeing more players like pulled up at the back end or more unique combos at the front? Because out of the 3 of us, you've definitely done the most drafts on Underdog.
Yeah, I would say in general, I'm seeing a lot more people a lot more often drafting for combos. And, you know, like Ron is saying, it's really mindful to be like focused on your combos, your ownership, because it's like ultimately it's your portfolio. But I'm noticing that like there's a lot of like wagging of the finger of like, you know, hey, you know, we're trying to be unique here, but we know ADP value, and there's something to be said for that, like that fine balance of, yes, there's ADP value, there's CLV, like, and those things can create their own combos, and you're at risk of, pushing in another rare combo to someone else. But for all intents and purposes, like, I think a really good way, and something I preach to people, is like, if you're gonna put in a good amount of volume, you want to kind of have a lot of different types of the teams, because ultimately, there's going to be like a few landmines you want to avoid, and then outside of that, like as Rob is saying, the chaos in the playoffs is really all that we care about ultimately. And there's so much that's going to vary that, with matchups, with injuries, things completely out of our control, things that we cannot, like Saquon's floor and ceiling was something that a lot of the faders last year were like, hey, if he's not going to catch a ton of passes and Hurts is going to be there, I don't see him as this mega smash unless he just like completely goes nuclear. And he does until the money weeks. And then all of a sudden that floor we were all worried about comes to fruition. And for that reason, it's like making sure that we have combos of players we like, but because we're too afraid to stay in the lanes of ADP, or like that's, and it's also just super easy for us to see, getting in the mindset of just like, well, these are the guys I like here, these are the guys I like here. And it's like, well, that's going to preclude you from having certain combos of guys when you probably want lots of combos of the guys you like, because we have no idea how their weeks are going to pan out. And I'd say that I'm seeing that a little bit more often, just because I think there's to me, it seems like the tiers have never been flatter outside of like at pick 5 onwards. It feels like I can make a huge case for everybody in the first round, which is a good thing for like not taking stands in the first round. And then, second through fourth, it's like, dude, this is flat as hell. And it's like, well, if it's flat as hell, then, there's a really good case for making sure you have a lot of different types of those guys. I haven't had to do a lot of pulling up because I'm seeing guys at the turns doing that and allowing me just to get it unique there. But it's something the last 2 weeks I've been hammering certain guys, and it's like, okay, there's not been as much movement as I would have liked by this point. I keep telling myself ADP is going to naturally shift these combos for me. And it's been more stale than it has been in the past that I can remember, outside of like a few names during this time period. So maybe the lesson is, throttle back on the volume until the ADP starts shifting the landscape to be more unique for my portfolio. Or as Rob mentions, you reach very justifiable amounts just to get the combos, because at the end of the day, a lot of these guys do project within a point or two of each other. And if we're not giving up a huge projectable difference, then the ADP difference is not some scary thing to avoid. Because ultimately, like it's going to be a toss up of who's the guy you need in 15, who's the guy you need in 16, and then ultimately what are the combos you need in week 17 that even made it there.
Yeah, like Rob, you've talked about this offseason about how like Brock Bowers, Trey McBride teams, solo tight ends, you feel like that might be one of the things that's viable this year. And so I guess if you're looking to get different and create different combinations, only having to dedicate one tight end position potentially could do that. Like, how often is that something you've mixed in?
So I like it, but I don't, it's not like a staple. It's if I want to do it 2 to 5% of the time, sure, I'll do that. I think it's just, how are you doing it? Like, how are you mixing that stuff in? And I like Trey McBride a little more than Bowers, just because of the flexibility you have with him. But with Bowers dropping, you still have flexibility with Bowers.
Right.
So like you could do a lot of stuff with both of those guys. I think that what I'm doing more so than that is just to bring up Jonathan Taylor again this year. I don't like drafting Jonathan Taylor either, to be honest with you, Tom. But if I'm going to have 8% of Jonathan Taylor, it is going to be a different 8%. My 8% is going to be more powerful than your 8% if you're just clicking buttons because your butthole's puckered to ADP, right? Like I'm going to find a way to make my Jonathan Taylor teams and just a little bit different than everybody else's, which I think is perfectly easy on this stuff. As Tyler said, everything is really flat. I think this is the best first round we've ever had. I do take stands in the first round. I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. I just think there's so many, you could do things that you're comfortable with as long as you're thinking outside the box a little bit. The way that I'm shooting for 1% might not be the way that Tyler's shooting for 1%, might not be the way that Tom's shooting for 1%. But if the three of us keep doing the same shit over and over again as the other two are doing, then we might as well just give everybody our money, right? Because you don't make money for advancing in these tournaments. You just don't. You don't make any money. And everybody is drafting to advance right now, like especially this year. Like the construction of rosters this year has been insane to watch, that we are regressing as a society in best ball. And it doesn't mean that there's bad 3 quarterback or 3 tight end teams, but just being really thought conscious of how you're building those teams and not constantly doing it, I think is a huge edge. And people are drafting 3 quarterback, 3 tight end teams at like insanely high clips this year. And I just
I know that's something we've talked about in your Discord before, and it's something which definitely like a lot of Spike Week users as well kind of want to lean into the fragility of it. And like, is there anything that you've ever kind of seen like in the numbers, because obviously you guys collect so much great data from the tools you've got, that kind of leads you to think that the 1% outcomes, they are linked to the 2 QB or 2 tight end builds, or is it more that the roster combinations with them, because they're different to the 3 QB builds? Is that where you kind of lean towards the 2 QB, 2 tight end builds?
Yeah, I just think that the point replacement is just like non-existent for the most part. And if you have, and especially if you go with like an elite quarterback that scores 100 more points than everybody else, it's like, all right, great. You added 12 points Tyler Shucks week that he was, filling in for a bye week or some shit. And if Josh Allen dies, you're dead too. So like, it's just so obvious on those. I think to the back end, that's a little bit different. But when you're drafting, I push my 2 QB teams. Like, I think that we are insane for where we're drafting Justin Herbert right now. Personally, I think that he's at the back end of a tier that he should be the front end of. And I think it just a lot of stuff in that range allows you to stay with 2 quarterbacks and not have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, Tyler, we're kind of, and we are going to get into a draft in a minute. We're just waiting on one more to fill a BBM 30-second draft. But Tyler, we tend to lean a little more into the idea that we like 3 quarterbacks stacked. But I think we definitely approach it with a mindset, like Rob's saying, of not leaning too heavily into it if it's draft capital, particularly in 18-round drafts. Like, what kind of percentage would you guess off the top of your head is your 3 QB builds this year versus 2 QB, if you've got an idea of it?
Yeah, I'd say that like I have a decent amount because I've always been I've always wanted to stack 3 quarterbacks because I tend to push quarterback late. I tend to try to arbitrage the early prices, and only recently have I just decided, okay, if these quarterbacks are going to stay around this price, to Rob's point, I didn't want to have none of them comboed with the guys I like, because if they nuke in the playoffs or they nuke in the finals, I'm locked out, and I don't want to be locked out. So it's time to start getting some elites and start building some 2s, or hey, if I'm boxed out and I have 2 solid guys, a Purdy, a T-Law, Purdy, a Herbert, whatever, I'm not going to force a third just to have a third guy. And so I'd say it's a good chunk because of how I try to build my teams and arbitraging the quarterback position. But I agree with everything Rob said about just like mindfulness about why you're doing what you're doing. And much like last year, 0RB was the highest it had been used on Underdog in a long time. We're on the clock at 3. Rob, give us your leans here in the first round, since you are a man that is not afraid to take a first round stand.
I mean, I would always take someone like Jefferson here. CeeDee Lamb is fun. If you want to get real wild, we take Nico.
Brother, you shout, we do
it. Let's get wild. I mean, I feel like with the background you've got, Rob, it would be offensive for us to not get a little bit wild.
It's a nice full circle moment, because Tom and I flipped the board a couple of times, taking Nico at 2 and 3, because, as thought leaders over in our little neck of the woods, we're like, if Nico has just as equal of a shot in a full health season to go nuclear, I don't want to have none of Nico and the second and third turn guys. just because I'm tethered to ADP when all of these guys could smash in the finals, and I don't want to be locked out of that combo of guys.
Yeah, to steal a stat from my good friend John Daigle, do you know what his target share was when Steph Diggs went down?
God, it was like 32 or 33%, something insanely high.
It was closer to 40. It was like 39%.
There we go.
So,
there we go.
and not only does he have a huge target share, he is a guy that can just absolutely break a slate. So
my kind of argument for Nico as well, it's that thing that like the Texans just aren't set up to run this year. They're set up to go the Bengals route where it's like they just simply have to pass.
Yeah. I mean, and that offensive line ain't any better, so they're going to be gunning and chucking probably as much as they can. I know they don't want to, but wants and needs are two different things.
Yeah, my hesitancy with the Texans is that like I agree that hey, if the guys they were the O-line was not playing well, they were one of the most penalized, they're not adapting to coaching, they're not committing less penalties, it's time to just clean house. It almost felt like they could have done a little bit more. Like they added a lot of new bodies. They didn't add a lot of new talented bodies. And you're really hoping that, coaching and chemistry makes up for the lack of talent. That's not the first time the Texans have tried to do that with this roster in the last 7 years. It doesn't always work, especially in year one. And right now, the early news is every guy is getting work at every position. And boy, does that not fill your heart with optimism that it's going to work itself out. And the fun thing about Nico is if you go back and you look at the long touchdown plays he cracked more than on one hand, it's like the points per game is also misleading because of the big plays he had that were taken back to penalty. And it's like, yeah, this is a guy that looks like the type of top 5 receiver that, this is a guy that can contend for that first overall wide receiver 1. It's just like who scores the most touchdowns. And it's like, well, he looks like the guy that can do that from any point in the field. And I'm with you, Rob. That's like Steph Diggs is a solid target earner. Look at the contract he just got to go to New England. And now there's 2 rookies and Christian Kirk. I'm not afraid to say that I think Nico could be head and shoulders the clear alpha once again that they run this offense through, especially with 3 dome games in the playoffs. And this team always plays down to competition. So I don't think they'll be lapping the division by any means when it comes to playoff contention either.
Yeah. So, Rob, obviously we've talked about it. Like, we want to get a bit weird. What's the unique combo here? Obviously, Jonathan Taylor probably isn't paired with Nico too often, but he goes 1 pick before us. Rashee Rice, probably some 3rd round. What stands out to you?
I mean, I love Rashee Rice. He's my favorite pick here.
Big Rice,
I think you're fine with Rice here.
Yeah,
and because once you flip the board, you do not have to get crazy with it. You're flipping it to draft the top of the queue, essentially, right? And I kind of want to pull up that comment from Mac Nova, who said maybe you'll get lucky enough to get Lad to fall to you at 22, and that's like the opposite of what we're trying to do here. Like I love me some Nico with Lad. But buddy, that combination is going to happen at a high clip. So the whole point is to get Nico away from that range of guys, and you've just made your team unique by making one move, and now you can just draft and you can get all your ADP values later, and you can just your first 4 or 5 rounds makes your team unique just by drafting at the top of the board.
Yep, absolutely.
Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Terry McLaurin, top wide receivers, and then it's Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown. Rob, any particular leans?
No, I mean, I'd be with Garrett Wilson or Chase Brown here, however you want to build through this.
Tyler, I'd be happy with Garrett Wilson. Yourself?
I'm good with Garrett. As wide receiver 3, I don't mind the volatility that we're likely to see with him with Justin Fields.
Just going to shout out Kiki as well, who's busy drafting over on FFPC whilst watching us. Only option for us UK folks. Yeah, it's bad times. I will be live on Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 p.m. UK time in the $35 Superflex. Come and draft with us. It is a lot of fun, that contest. So, yeah, Garrett Wilson as your 3rd wide receiver feels plenty fine. We're definitely into the realms of a 0 RB draft now. And Rob, you kind of talked about how a lot of people just don't draft 0 RB the right way or draft poor 0 RB teams. Like Tyler, you mentioned it, like the amount of 0 RB drafts last year was 1 in 5 on underdog, people were drafting zero RB teams by the kind of historical definition of like no running back in the first 6 rounds. But Rob, what is it you think we can do better than other people that some people are still missing with zero RB?
Sure. What's the other thing that zero RB drafters don't like to do?
Take the ugly, dusty old guys. We like to take all the same types of guys. That's always my lesson learned every year is they all take the same guys.
That is a big one.
And then the one I'd say is one which Hayden's talked about plenty. It's stop drafting wide receivers at a certain point.
There you go.
Well, you're going zero RB to strengthen yourself at other positions.
Yeah.
And the one that zero RB drafters don't like to strengthen themselves at is quarterback. They would prefer to go with the elite tight end. Most of the zero RB drafters aren't taking the elite QBs. So when I'm drafting zero RB, I'm very cognizant of taking an elite quarterback because now I've also made my zero RB team different than most of the other zero RB teams because people are just like, if I'm going zero RB, I got to fire 5 wide receivers immediately. It's the only thing I can do. It's called zero RB so that my wide receivers can be stronger than everybody else's. And that's it. That's everything. Maybe I'll take George Kittle in the 5th round. And it's like, buddy, you can take Lamar Jackson. You can take Jalen Hurts. You can take Jaden Daniels. You can take Josh Allen. All in the 4th round, 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
You can be stacked at wide receiver still. You can leverage yourself against the rest of the field when you get to these playoff weeks. And, then we're off to the races when Josh Allen, because what's going to happen one year is when one of the elite quarterbacks drops 45 to 50, like Josh Allen did in the game last year in an actual playoff week, the next year it's going to be like, we got to draft elite tight ends all year. I mean, elite quarterbacks all year. Yeah. Why weren't we drafting elite quarterbacks? They were going in the 4th and 5th round. Why weren't we drafting Josh Allen? Why weren't we drafting Lamar? So that's what you're going to see.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a site like Underdog where quarterback is the more like potent onesie to be concerned about. And it's the one that we can most predictably, I think that's the most important part, the most predictably say, like, these are the guys likeliest to separate, and these are their likely floors and ceilings, and this is how often these guys are likely to hit their ceilings and not have floor games. And it's like, that alone is like, you want to supercharge your no running backs? Well, be stronger at the onesie that scores more every week.
And it also opens you up to take better running backs in your zero RB drafts because now you can push that second quarterback so far and you don't lose one of the running backs in the rounds that you would have wanted to get them.
Absolutely.
So that is something else that I do like to do myself.
Oh, you're muted, Tom.
I was wondering why Tom was just letting us have a little conversation here.
Where are we liking to go here at the 46th pick?
I think you pick one of the 2 onesies. I think you either take Kittle or Hurts.
I'm good with Hurts. See if we can't get we just make sure we get the quarterback.
Yeah, we just get the quarterback, and there's a lot you can do with Hurts still.
Yeah.
And if you don't do anything else with Hurts, it's Jalen Hurts, and he's running for 2, throwing for 2. In week 17 for you, right? Like that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So
yeah, just going back to the zero RB drafters stuff, like last year when teams on Underdog who took zero RB and still took an elite quarterback, it was about 40% of the number of teams who were doing it. So I mean, that's not a nothing, but it's definitely not the way that like Sean Siegel talked about like building these traditional zero RB teams when he kind of coined it. So I definitely think it's an exploitable edge. Zero RB is so not dead on real.
It wasn't dead last year.
Right, so we're back on the clock. George Kittle has gone, but we could be looking at another wide receiver and just really kind of hammer that to the point where we're building it out. My lean here would be to either Jalen Waddle or Zay Flowers. Rob, who do you like?
I'm a Waddle guy this year, so I'm fading Tyreek and I'm hammering Waddle.
Nice.
How do you feel about Jonnu Smith? Because like he's dropped maybe 15, 16 spots in the last few weeks since the trade talk stuff. Do you think that now he's kind of almost becoming a buy low, and the most obvious thing is that he ends up just staying in Miami?
Yeah, I think he's just a mix-in guy. Like he's fine. But he's not a guy that I'm like actively pursuing to get overweight. But if you did get up to 14%, I would understand. And if you were down at 5%, I would understand. Just based on how you were drafting, it's just one of those. He's there. What do you need? You see a guy that you need? Is that the position you need? Then you can just, fire him in there.
Yeah, John is obviously like very efficient. He's always been efficient, and the question's always just been, will they give him volume? And I think it's pretty clear that to me, Jonnu is a pretty binary bet. If the offense is once again struggling to keep Tua upright and to pass or run block effectively, then they're going to spam the short area stuff, and that's gonna likely buoy Jonnu and Achan really strongly. If they get back to their, we're actually trying to contend as a team and threaten, to actually make the playoffs, then that it seems to follow that Reek and Waddle, or at least, the deeper ADOT guys, are going to get back to form, and Jonnu suffers then as the more low ADOT guy. So I think it's like, I agree. It's like you mix him in if you need him. He was never the strongest tight end target to begin with. Because of that, like we see these guys pop, like, again, very efficient, and efficient guys can rack up touchdowns and lost games and whatnot. But it's like, to me, they were way stronger, clearer target and dominant breakout bets. I don't mind mixing in, because it's like much like the Houston O-line, I have a lot of question marks about Miami's O-line and what they, this organization definitely seems like they have a, nuke the offense, protect to at all costs option. But this season can work out a million different ways. And, that's assuming that Miami decides to hit the nuke the offense button instead of let's trade for a competent, guard or a tackle mid-season and try to get this. Like, there's a lot of ways the season can play out. And we shouldn't be precluding ourselves from outlier seasons in all directions in a lot of different ways. And that's a really good point. That's like, if you're going to buy on these cheap pieces, well, buy on the cheap pieces that'll likely hit if, the offense returns to even somewhat close to what it used to be. Because it's obviously where they'd like it to go. They're not winning anything, playing the arena football. Get it out real quick, offense.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at how different this draft board is to last year in terms of zero RB builds. And like, that's what makes it so viable this year, is that we're not fighting against 4 or 5 other teams in the same draft. We've got 4 wide receivers and an elite quarterback. Now we're back up on the clock. Rob, is there anybody at the running back position who'd convince you to take them, or are we still pissing?
I mean, I wouldn't hate Judkins, but I mean, I'm a Jaden Reed guy through and through, and that would be who I would go with in this particular spot.
Well, let's make sure to lock him up, because I know the folks on the turn.
Yeah, they look like they want them some wide receivers right now.
Oh yeah, they're hungry. We see the hunger in their eyes. We got a bully tight end from the one spot.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on that situation as well to see what the outcome is from that. You're right, Tyler. This season can go an infinite number of ways. The one way it can't go is Rome Odunze being a good 5th round pick. So that makes me laugh every time. Every time I see it, it cracks me up that we're drafting Rome in the 5th round.
Especially because like he fell a lot further than that with some of the bearish stuff, and because Luther Burke, we'll pick here. What is calling out to you here for our 7th round pick, Rob?
I mean, I like Caleb. I like Tony Pollard for this team. I mean, pick your poison. I would even go with Diggs if you like Diggs. If you wanted to get one more wide out, I think it's kind of pushing it too much.
I think I'd be fine with running backs. Like, I'm okay going Caleb, unless you want to make a strong case for Tony Pollard, Tyler.
No, I think a nice way to veer is to go into the unknown of the rookie, especially when we're talking late season upside. Jaylen Warren on a single year contract, and Caleb's got a really appealing type of profile, and we don't take Metcalf there, so I think it makes sense to kind of double down on that bet and say we're not taking a piece of the pass game because we're taking a piece of the run game, and we're betting that that's the way this pans out. And with a 49-year-old, war veteran in Rodgers, it would not shock me if, we see an offense not unlike the Miami offense last year to protect the man in the backfield that could crumble in a moment's notice with a hit to the back.
Well, like you go back to this time last year, and everybody's takes were, remember what Aaron Jones did with Aaron Rodgers. Brees Hall is going to catch a million passes. Now, obviously, like Caleb Johnson might not be as good a pass catcher as Aaron Jones or even Brees Hall, but like the checkdowns are just going to be so plentiful that I think it's hard to ignore it completely. And I've still been drafting Jalen Warren. We still like Jalen Warren. His price is quite palatable, but to ignore Caleb Johnson feels like a mistake.
Yeah, Warren's going to have a role for sure. And I think it's going to be a big third down role because of probably pass protection stuff. And Rodgers just always being more comfortable with a veteran versus a rookie. Just going back to, the type of quarterback he is. But that doesn't mean that Caleb Johnson can't come in and show that he can do it in training camp, in preseason, in the first few weeks. We saw this with the Bucs a few years ago, where Rachaad White came in. He was a rookie. We were all like, well, he's not going to get on the field on third downs because Brady refuses to have a rookie running back. And then Rachaad White showed that he could do it. And that was the guy they trusted that year to be there on third down to protect Brady. So I think it's perfectly fine. I like Caleb Johnson. I like mixing a lot of those running backs in. I don't have a particular favorite in that range. I just have a non-favorite, and that is.
And even the simpler point that I have to remind myself plenty is, if Warren gets an injury, it picks up an injury at any point in the season, Caleb Johnson has the type of profile that can pick up the workhorse majority of the work, and with his athleticism and with this offense, explosions, and that he can either win it out. Injuries happen. There's a multitude of ways for players to break out if they're talented, and I think that's another salient point for drafters to help diversify the type of stuff. Is like there are plenty of talented guys that you should want to take shots on, and the way they break out may not be clear, and you don't want to preclude yourself from that tail outcome being something we were not creative enough to come up with. Just because an NFL season's long.
Yeah.
We're all excited for Kenneth Gainwell season.
Oh man. So Rob,
I know Kenneth Gainwell is not getting, and I can't even say that with a straight face because Arthur Smith will do it just to.
Buddy, be ready.
No, dude, anything Arthur Smith does, I'm ready for. I'm like, you know what? I know you're gonna pull some bullshit. I'm ready.
It's the combination of Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers just feels so beautifully miserable that something will surprise us, because there's no way the two of them can be in a room and be as headstrong as they are, be opinionated about the way to play football in dissimilar ways, but also similarly unfriendly to fantasy football, and something doesn't go horrendously wrong. So yeah, very much excited to see it. We're kind of getting into the range where you've got the Colts receiver, the wide receiver cliff edge is going to come pretty fast. We've got 5 wide receivers, so we don't necessarily need one, but it's guys like Jordan Mason, Jalen Warren, Tyrone Tracy, Travis Etienne, Cam Scatterbo here. Rob, are you a Jordan Mason guy?
I am absolutely a Jordan Mason guy, so I definitely think that's who we should go with.
Do you think that there's a danger Jordan Mason's getting pushed up a little too much? I know JJ Zacharyson talked about how his target share numbers were just incredibly unimpressive last year, and that doesn't tend to be something that expands year to year. Or do you just think the goal line role can be so valuable it's worth it in half PPR?
I think it's the goal line role. I think it's the actual capital spent to get him on the team is a big thing that I like. So I'm down for all of that. What I would love to figure out at this range right now is which Giants running back do we want?
Right.
That's my blind spot right now. I can't figure out which one to click.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with Tyrone Tracy on this build because we're kind of probably balancing a little for Caleb Johnson, probably a little bit for Jordan Mason having less work to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely down for that. Can we scroll down a little bit just to see who else is available?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with Tracy. I'd be fine with Sharbs, but Tracy probably makes the most sense, I think, for this team.
Let's do that. Rob, like one of the things you talked about in your 1% video that we've kind of touched on a few times, and anyone who hasn't watched it should check it out. It's pinned in the description below and absolutely is well worth 10 minutes of your time. But you talked about like taking stands and leading into those stands. What's kind of like the heaviest exposure that you've got to a player so far, or is it certain ranges of the draft where you're willing to take those stands more than other areas?
Well, the percentage really matters on the round in which the player is drafted, right? So my heaviest player exposure at the moment is Trey Benson, and I'm hovering around 40-ish% on Trey Benson. But I have 26 to 29% Nico Collins. So who am I actually taking more of a stand on? The answer is probably both around the same, right? Based on draft capital and stuff. When I take stands, I'm very deliberate about them. Like if I'm openly taking a stand, it's usually about the number, can change year to year, but it's usually about 5 guys that I want to be absolutely heavy on and 5 guys that I just want nothing to do with. And, give or take some numbers on that. And I make it a point to be overweight, underweight those guys. And I do that through the first round. Sometimes it's the middle round. Sometimes it's the later rounds. I think a lot of them are easy this year. That 7th round where some of these wide receivers are going, Jacoby Myers makes me chuckle. Khalil Shakur is laughable at his price range. Wan'Dale Robinson getting drafted over some of the other players around him are super easy.
Like empty calorie targets, Rob? Dude, that doesn't get your gooch all hot and bothered knowing that he got 140 delightful targets and did dick all with it on a half PPR site. No,
half PPR site where his what was his top score of the entire year, which was actually week 17, but it was like 16 points or something like that, where that's balling out for Wan'Dale Robinson. So I'll pass. I'll take the guys that have the 1 week upside, especially back there. I think one of the best clicks on the board back there is QJ. We're talking about a guy that can just go out and have a nuclear week, and then when he scores 5, I don't care. Thanks, I'll take him all day.
Yeah. Literally better in best ball. It's like you don't have to figure out when we know he's gonna get some cheeky bullshit broken coverage plays because of how Greg Roman, Herbert, and Ladd work this offense. And the best part is everybody was super done with him. It's like, well, he can't do that. I was like, he doesn't have to do exactly that. It's mostly like, this offense is better than we thought it was, and now they just got better weapons, and we want nothing to do with the guy that they figured out how to use well, because they took Trey Harris, who right now is not exactly running with the starters. And it's like, let me have all pieces of good offenses that score touchdowns on a site like this. Seems good.
Yeah, we want the third pass catcher. Are we drafting Chargers tight ends right now? Are you guys drafting Chargers tight ends right now?
Every time we get to them, I go I have no idea who they're going to use 45% of in week 17.
I don't need QJ to run 100% of the routes. I need him to go out there and score on 2 go routes and then, and cash my check, please. Thanks.
We're taking Marvin Mims at 120, 130, who ran less than 30% of routes, but QJ at 150 is I turn my nose up to you. It's very funny.
We on real time saying this time next year we'll be taking Wan'Dale. Maybe, but right now we're on to our next pick. Kyle Williams, Mondre Stevenson, Tyler Warren, Marvin Mims, and then it kind of gets a little bit murky. Anybody you'd like to pull up in this range, like Tajay Spears perhaps, or look at the tight end position, or Rob?
I like
any
Tajay. I like Ramondre. For what he is. What I think he's going to be. Do I think he's going to break best ball? No, but I think he's a great 0 RB. We know that he's going to get work, especially at the beginning of the year, and I think he'll continue to get work. I love Travion. I'm a big Travion guy, but give me the guy that I know is also going to mix in a little bit, and I'm fine with it.
It's the contingent upside. We know they'll give him a majority of the work if anything happens. All right, we're back up on the clock. I'm assuming we're going to keep pushing QB2. And I'm assuming you're not a Javonte guy if you're not a Wan'Dale guy, but I could be wrong.
I take Javonte. I'm not flag planting him, but I do take him. Right. I think it's fine. Again, we're doing 0 RB builds. Like when you're doing 0 RB builds, it's not always about the guy.
You want him or
It's about
Tajay?
whichever one you guys prefer. Tajay's fun.
Let's
Tajay
go
gives us some outs later too.
I also
Yeah.
just like to show off that I can freeze the clock whenever I please.
Brett in the chat saying Jacoby going to be fed this year. Michael Pittman 2 years ago. I've got to be honest, like I don't mind Jacoby. I'm not massively into him, but like the whole Jack Besh falling massively, Dante Thornton's like rising in ADP just kind of made me think, you know what, maybe this is as simple as it is Genty, Bowers, and Jacoby Myers, and then the rest is just a mess that we don't need to be involved in. What is it about Myers that's kind of keeping you cool, bro?
Do you think that you're going to wake up on the first game of week 17 as you advance through and say, thank God this team has Jacoby Myers. I'm so glad I spent that 7th round pick on Jacoby. He's really the reason I'm here, and he's the reason I'm going to win this tournament. The answer is no to all the above. So hard pass on Jacoby Myers.
Hey man, in the words of Kyle Shanahan, I'll just be happy to wake up on the first game of week 17.
That's true. You are just trying to get one through. But when you're roster baiting, that's the one that you're like, all right, I'm just gonna X that name out. Let's put our finger over that one. Make sure that we're looking at the next wide receiver. Give me that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can definitely get that point of view, but like, you know, Juwan Jennings was someone that this time a year ago people were probably making that point about, or you know,
Not this guy, brother. This guy had a bet with Eric Beimfor that Juwan Jennings was going to be a better player than Curtis Samuel.
Well, and on that point, I would just like to know that, like, where do you stand with him? Because seemingly he stands out once again as a really strong pick, especially now. FYI for the folks, it seems like we got confirmation today that Brandon Ayuk did in fact tear his MCL and got it repaired. So the fantasy docs that were hopeful about his type of archetype and his healing timeline are saying that they were wrong on their assumptions. They're adjusting back down their bearish expectations for year one because of that news, which to me stands the reason that Rizzy and Jennings and Kittle all become even stronger picks than I already thought they were at cost, given the schedule, given the offense, given the philosophy seemingly of like the deep pass attack and what they were able to do in their breakout games and seasons.
Yeah. One of my biggest flaws through the first like month of drafting was I just wasn't getting enough 49ers pass catchers. I liked them. I was just doing stuff around them. Not that I wasn't drafting them, but I'm trying to retroactively make sure that I have. I mean, I had Kittle, but talking about the other two, Pearsall and Jennings, I'm trying to make sure that I'm adding them to my portfolio. And Charlie, we're going to agree to disagree. And you had a comment earlier that said it's crazy to fade the Bears wide receiver 1, which I totally agree with. And that's why I have close to 20% DJ Moore. So
speaking about 1% outcomes, we haven't opened the can of Travis Hunter worms, and we're about to come up on the clock. So be interested to hear your take on Travis Hunter this best ball season. Yeah, also, I think that was Hartman, by the way. So I'll wag my finger at Hartman.
I can bring that up, but we are going to be on the clock here.
Yeah.
Do we want to pull Dallas Goedert up? And
we absolutely
stack him,
unless we already lost him.
I think he went much earlier.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, do we want to look at the second quarterback and try to work out if we can stack some it, or is there a plan to that which is bubbling away?
I don't hate Isaiah Likely here. I think that if we are talking about 1% outcomes, I like both of the Baltimore tight ends immensely. But I think there is a range of outcomes that Isaiah Likely is just the tight end 1 on Baltimore. So I think that if that is the case, he's severely underpriced. And I like him a lot.
I'd be very surprised if we got to training camp and Isaiah Likely hasn't had a nice fat contract extension whilst Mark Andrews is left to play out the last year of his deal and decide whether he wants to take a smaller deal to stay there next year. I think that Isaiah Likely is someone I've paired with a lot of elite tight end builds because it's like, look, there will be weeks where the nothing is there, but it doesn't hit your lineup and it doesn't really matter. But when he has those kind of weeks like last year where he was the tight end 1 overall against the Chiefs in week 1, and then really kind of got going. And we saw it against the Bills in the playoffs. He just was by far the more reliable option out of the two. Like Mark Andrews is still going to score touchdowns, like 11 touchdowns last year isn't disappearing, but very much on Isaiah Likely, and that's the tight end position and the onesie boxed off there. But then we can figure out what to do. We're 20 seconds away. Tua goes one pick before us. Who, Tyler, you'd start? Should we just take Quentin Johnson, figure out quarterback later?
I'm fine with that. I think quarterback is figured out later.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, just going back. Yeah, Charlie saying that wasn't me really the Bears. That was Hartman. And I am the guy saying I'm playing Andrews more tush push TDs than Hurts. They don't like to use Andrews down near the goal line. I mean, that's just Derrick Henry's domain. So I'm probably not going to buy that one. But you want to talk 1% outcomes? Maybe that's the 1% outcome that we need.
It's just good process to take tight ends on top offenses. That's the tight ends that end up mattering are the tight ends that score touchdowns. And, it's a lot easier to chase those touchdowns on top 5 offenses than bottom 5 offenses, regardless of like the specific role. And I think all the pass catchers in Baltimore seem like strong targets simply because, in contingent out cases where Henry doesn't stay healthy full season or a stretch of the season, they're likely to be pass heavier without him. And they also add no new pass catchers. So Lamar just being on his streak of awesome as a passer, getting better every year, stands. I want pieces of all those guys, because when Lamar goes off, the whole offense goes off.
I've also been known to double click Andrews with Likely, and then just because I think it's the one offense you can do that with. I think you can have both of them.
Yeah.
In 20-round best ball, are you building 3 tight end builds with that one, or are you just taking the Baffert the bye week?
You could do it either way. I mean, it really just depends on how you construct the rest of your team. I'd be fine with taking just the 0 in the bye week. I mean, we've seen enough times that when you draft a tight end late just to fill a bye week, that tight end can still score 0 an immense amount of time. So I don't hate it. Like, it's fine. But
it's the one position that you don't have to worry about a bye week. The data, when you looked at even for the advancement bros, and I want to appeal to them just a little bit and just say that we can all agree that the position we are scared the least of getting not by because of a 0 is the position that scores the zeros the most often. I think that the advance hit with having a 0 during a bye overlap at tight end was minuscule to insignificant. So I'm happy to care about that position the least, and just hope the volatility is all I need at the other positions.
Yeah. You've asked me about Travis Hunter earlier, and I have drafted 0 Travis Hunter because I just think once training camp comes, his price is going to fall again. It's already starting to. The whispers are coming out of the building that he's starting to line up on defense, which we knew he was going to do. Right. And people overreact. So if I can get the cheaper Travis Hunter, he's the one guy that I just was like, I don't need him right now. And if I don't get any of them, I'm also fine with it. As much as I love that team overall, it's just like whatever.
Okay. Battle come back on the clock. 1561 so far. Rob, what are you feeling?
Well, we need Cam Ward. So I know JGFC has 3 QBs. I just don't know what Grasshopper's team looks like in terms of the QB.
Grasshopper is a psycho that I trust 0 as a bully tight end bro with 4 receivers. I'm happy locking out Cam Ward because none of these guys I am gonna lose sleep over not coming back around to us personally.
Yeah, Cam Ward is a fun click then here. I think it works out well, especially with our Tajay Spears pick.
Yeah.
The way they built
a guy that we should expect a high scramble rate from, so I don't necessarily need him stacked. If he's hitting my lineup, it's probably because he's rushing for some touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Steve on this one. I think Hunter can go back up in ADP. They'll show how much offense he'll play. I think the training camp highlights are going to be big, but I can definitely see both sides of that coin. We're going to come. we're going to come back on the clock in a second, but I think if you're fading Travis Hunter, then Diami Brown's the kind of player that you probably want to end up taking a lot of and betting on him to have a good year. Right, so we're back up. Do you want to, are there any of the wide receivers for the Titans that we'd want to bring up to this spot, or we just go in with another running back and building out that room more?
I think I'd want a running back here. I like Jalen. I like Rico.
I love
Jalen Wright for the
I
team.
actually like all three of those dudes. Like you could
Go on,
talk
Tyler.
into all of them.
I'll take the guy that was actually really good last year, and I think it's a more ambiguous backfield than the market is saying, with Hubbard having a top 55 ADP and Rico being priced below, Roshan Johnson for reasons that we've just decided as a market that we know better, and especially for like zero RB, I like Wright feels very much like a contingent play, and Rico feels like he has a lot of outs. His workload could be more than we suspect. We kind of got an inkling of that with Brooks, lone healthy mix in of series. Anytime I get to leverage a player that I don't have a huge stand on, or at least I have a fade on, and I certainly didn't take on my team, to me it feels like a nice double lever to not only am I fading Chuba in my portfolio, or I don't have him on this team, I'm also then taking the guy that I think would benefit the most if Chuba doesn't hit that week or, over the course of the season. I like all those outs because it sounds like they're going to be used in both phases of the game. And to the Hunter point, I think Chuba could easily get cheaper. We've already seen him fall to the 6th round with those quotes of, hey, I'm going to mix in both guys and they'll both be in the backfield, also adding a pass catcher and ETN. So to me, it feels like I'm going to take a lot of Rico right now because he should be priced up closer to the RB2s, ambiguous 1Bs. And as long as he's not, to me, it seems like a very clear target.
Yeah, like put out a video last week, like the 10 most important backup running backs, and it's so hard not to include Rico in there because, like, we saw it last year. Like, he might not be the complete package, but it's the guy who had the 5th most rushing yards from week 10 onwards, finished as a top 24 RB in half his games last year. Like, and you can get him at this point in drafts. Like, it's just easy click.
Yeah. And the last point I want to make on the Brian Thomas, when I said I agree, I definitely agree that it could go either way. There's a sliding scale there. But I think the way that you can leverage it is the point we keep forgetting is Brian Thomas Jr. fell because of this pick in the draft. So your leverage point is just take more Brian Thomas Jr.
Which, there's never been. That's like I looked at my exposures and I'm like, how am I so low on some of these guys in the first round? I'm like, oh yeah, because I keep getting 10, 11, and 12 picks, and I'm getting an obscene amount of Brian Thomas Jr. for bizarre reasons, like dominant yak target guys, like narrative FUD all you want that it came with Mac Jones. That's not the point you think you're making,
right?
Quite frankly, and if Hunter doesn't work out. Like Hunter falling without BTJ getting more expensive, make that one make sense. Unless Diami Brown is the breakout of all breakouts that I just haven't seen coming. It's very funny. The market's just not consistent. And I think anytime you get to, oppo that, it's usually a really good benefit for you because you're not doing what the other market drafters are doing by going with that FUD. I think a great example of that was last year, not buying into the Chargers receivers because you in the market decided that, they're just going to only run the ball. It's like anytime you can just I don't have the confidence the market has, you're probably going to win because you're oppoing all the people that are following the market on that.
So here's the start. We're coming up a couple of picks away. Obviously, we've got Cam Ward unstacked apart from Tajay Spears at the minute. Would you be interested in taking Chigokonkwo to get a stack, like a pass catching stack there, or is it just like, look, we've got the elite tight end. We've got Isaiah Likely, and we really need now to just hammer the tight end position, but you don't believe in Chig?
No, I thought Chig was the pick here. Other than I was going to tell you to shh because we wanted to get Will Shipley and Chig here. That was the dream. But now we're going to get Chig, I think. I would get Chig here because
this is a very flat, I don't give a shit tier, so happy to get the tight end stack.
So on that kind of note, Rob, how often are you pulling players up from deep in ADP at this point, because we
Yeah.
talked about like all this kind of like getting weird stuff, and who are the kind of guys that you'd want to be looking at here when we've got 2 picks left.
So on this team, I want an absolute moonshot at running back. And I think a couple of those guys are like DJ Giddens. I think Jarquez Hunter's one of them. I think Marshawn Lloyd can fit that bill if that's something that you were interested in. But with this team, I don't want Justice Hill, right? Like this team, we already have our Justice Hills. We need who can come in and who can nuke the field. Giddens is one that I really like. I think the 3 that we clicked are the 3 main ones, and I like Brashard Smith as well. So it's a pick your poison situation here. Which one do you want? And
it's Giddens for me.
Yeah, Giddens is perfectly fine, especially if you are like, so when I brought up all of the points about Jonathan Taylor earlier, it doesn't mean that's who you have to be drafting this year. You could still fade Jonathan Taylor if that's a guy that you don't like. But if you are fading Jonathan Taylor, you should be at least a bit overweight on DJ Giddens, right? Mm-hmm. You should leverage your fades a bit more. So like, I'm clearly fading James Conner this year, right? I'm leveraging that fade with Trey Benson. I'm going to an extreme with it versus what some other people would do, but I'm fine with extremes. I'm trying to win tournaments, man. Like that's what I'm trying to do. So
obviously, like you talked about, like Nico Collins and the extreme bet on him at the top of the draft board. Like, who's that coming at a cost against in round 1, round 2, kind of that range?
So I don't have a lot of Amon-Ra. I don't have a lot of the running backs that are in round 1. It makes me a little uncomfortable because I'm such a Bijan stan. Like I love Bijan Robinson. That I just haven't really been drafting Bijan. That'll probably just be like, we'll try to tuck him away in the home league or something like that. But, you know, Gibbs is the one running back that I think I want in the first round because I think Gibbs is the nuclear warhead of the running backs in the first round that has a solid floor and I think has the best single game upside of all of the running backs in the first round. Imagine where he would be going if his week 18 performance last year was his week 17 performance.
Like and if it counted towards his points per game and all these fantasy formats that cut it off at 17.
Yeah. And those games matter. Like those games actually matter. They were playing for something. So
well, I mean, that was part of what got you on to Jennings, right? Is like this and Fournette from years prior of like, hey, playoff runs and late season runs matter. That in fact, that probably matters way more than early season stuff. Cause like that's those are the most critical games, the most on the line. That is demonstrating the trust and vision of the coaching staff at that point in the season. And that's such strong signal that gamers just regularly forget. By the way, are we going 3rd tight end or 7th receiver here with our last pick, Rob?
I don't think we need a 3rd tight end. I think that we're shooting for likely to be that elite as Tom brought up. So what does a tight end do for this team?
Right.
I think our wide receivers are so stacked that we can shoot for the upside wide receiver. Now, if you want to overstack Tennessee, you can do that because you can take Io Manor if you really want to, or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I would take like maybe Troy Franklin, who's getting a lot of buzz at camp, gives us a little mini week 17 correlation as well.
I like that.
And those are kind of the guys
I'm down with Troy Franklin. I think that he's somebody who's going so massively overlooked this year. And look, we've seen Sean Payton be flipping with draft picks and take time to kind of bring him in. Marvin Mims wasn't somebody who was getting a whole lot of run, and people are confident taking him way ahead of Troy Franklin. So Troy Franklin, you go back and look at him as a prospect, and it was always clear that he needed time to develop. If you thought he was going to hit the ground from day one and be okay, then I think I'd just have to agree to disagree. Like, for him to get a full off season where he's training for the NFL with a playbook, as opposed to training for the combine and try to convince people he can do various bits. Like, I like the Troy Franklin shot, and I think he's probably warranting to be a little bit higher in ADP.
I'm happy with Tyler here. I thought that he would just, with the limited, well, there it is. I knew it was coming.
I'll always find a way around. Don't you ever put baby in a corner.
I knew that was coming. The last point I'll make is we were talking about how you said, with God, who's a wide receiver we were just talking about? It was the inverse Garrett Wilson point, is what I wanted to make. Oh, with BTJ. You were like, well, he did it with Mac Jones, and you said that isn't what you think it means. It's the same people that are like, well, when Garrett Wilson finally gets a quarterback every year, right? We're going on to year 4 with a new quarterback, and Garrett Wilson is finally getting drafted where Garrett Wilson should be getting drafted. I'm still taking my Garrett Wilson victory laps, by the way.
And you know what? People forget. We don't forget, Rob, because we do this a lot. We get a lot of shit. And we remember, we keep tabs because I mean that's part of the fun, right? Is when you're right and you're told, get in line. Yeah, no better. It's like sometimes it it pays off, and we keep track of those. We call those mental wins.
Yeah, I get enough wrong every year that when I do get something right, I have to make sure that I throw a little victory lap on it. And at least it was my hottest take of the season. So
yeah, and this idea that we shouldn't be victory lapping takes, like, nah, get the hell out of here. Absolutely down with that one. Tyler, would you be so kind to recap the full team for us?
We finished with a 2-7-7-2. Jalen Hurts, Cam Ward. I love that combo. Lots of rushing upside with this, and I'm gonna have so much Cam Ward this season because he's a locked in 17 game starter. The offensive line really strong.
Yep.
Cam Ward had a pretty strong deep passing profile. That's great for bombs, which is great for fantasy outlook. We saw that with Will Levis's lone usable spike 2 years ago, just like chunking the ball up and getting touchdowns. And he's probably a guy that's going to scramble a lot, so the rushing yards are going to be plentiful. And as long as he's this cheap, he's going to be on a shit ton of my teams. Caleb Johnson, Jordan Mason, Tyrone Tracy, Ramondre Stevenson, Tajay Spears, Rico Dowdle, and DJ Giddens. Really fun running back room, a lot of different ways to hit, a lot of different types of profiles. And I think this is the way to build zero RB teams. Don't get shy with quantity when you've pushed it far, and don't be shy about what kind of gruel you add to your team, because it might just be the disgusting thing you need in the finals. It's funny. Everybody says zero RB didn't work last year. There weren't many running backs alive week 17, much less that hit your lineup. So agree to disagree. And then at receiver, love flipping the board with my favorite late round, first round pick at receiver for inexplicable reasons. Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Jaden Reed, QJ, and Troy Franklin. All your better and best ball types of guys with just some grown ass men. That's a chaperone room, fellas. Not just a veteran that's going to watch you. Watch other teams make sweet love. We call those cucks, not chaperones. And then Isaiah Likely and Shig at tight end.
Yeah, Nico's making eye contact all day long.
Hundo P, baby. Hundo P.
Absolutely.
Like, that feels like it's got 1% upside.
Yeah, I mean, what we would have liked Goddard on this team. We would have liked Will Shipley. I just don't think it was necessary. And I think an important swing at the bottom end was like the third tight end was either the third tight end or DJ Giddens. And I think Giddens is actually kind of necessary on this team, where you want, like, we're shooting for massive upside with Caleb Johnson, and we're sort of sandwiching that massive upside, right? We got all of our fillings, and now we're just hoping that Caleb Johnson or DJ Giddens are just the dude.
Well, especially on a team like this, I'd rather say tight end is going to be the weak link any given week, because if I get a shot to fill my flex or my RB2 with the breakout guy during a stretch, Giddens is way more likely to be that than the tight ends available, Dalton Schultz and JT Sanders. Like those guys are not as likely to break a week or vault me into the top of my pod to get out of a playoff week at all.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to get Rob out of here soon, because I know he's got another show in 20 minutes time with Eric where they're talking about a very important topic. But Brett just asking, what are your other late round RB targets? More undrafted, the better. Look, this might just be the Ravens fan within me, but talking about 1% outcomes, I can't help but still click Keaton Mitchell every now and again. Training camp reports say that he's been up to the same speeds he was pre-ACL. And I just think, Justice Hill was just a guy before last year, and potentially Keaton Mitchell could still be that lightning to the thunder of Derrick Henry. Rob, who'd you like as somebody who barely gets drafted?
On Underdog, some of those guys that you said for sure. You're scrolling a little past them, but the guy that I really like I like Taj Brooks, but
Yeah.
buddy, give me Sean Tucker sometimes in the 18th round, because we already know that if either of the running backs there goes down, Sean Tucker is coming in and getting a role. And I don't know if you guys remember the DFS week last year when we were all excited to play Bucky Irving. I was super excited to play Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker was the RB1 of the entire goddamn week. So it's I think that if you mix some Sean Tucker in, you're gonna be fine, and he could reward you, and he has plenty of upside, and he's going undrafted as well.
Love it. Tyler, anyone from yourself?
I think Eli Mitchell is an interesting name to keep in mind. We've seen them revive Jarrett McKinnon as a oft injured, can never stay healthy, and never going to matter type of guy who was the RB1 for like an 8-week stretch, won U leagues across every tournament, and was then being drafted in the 9th round against most smart streamers' advice the year after that. So if you want to do some pattern matching. And I would just say at this point, take smart shots, go for talent, go for ambiguity, but go for talent, because if they're going to get the chance, then you want someone that can take and grow the chance instead of get it yoinked away because they're, dog shit. And especially a guy that can mix in game day active is even better. So someone explosive can be there playing special teams, so that if a in-game injury happens, a la Sean Tucker, they actually get worked in, coming into any quarter or half. And so guys like that, I like all the shouts y'all mentioned, and I'm warming up to all these guys, and I'm ready to, start hammering late info that we get during the summer, because that's going to give us, really good edge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rob is going to be live over on Spike Week's channel in 20 minutes time, going for naming the best athletes for every single jersey number from 0 to 99, and then
here's what we're doing, Tom. Here's what we're doing. I'm going to tell you what we're doing. I have compiled the ultimate list of the best player to wear numbered 00 all the way through 99. It is a compiled list. It is going to come up on screen. You are going to tell me in the chat if you think the pick is right or wrong. Eric is going to have his own list, which is going to have some blank spots because, God forbid, he comes up with 101 players. He just can't do it. And we're going to probably debate for 6 hours tonight. I feel like it's going to go crazy. There's some numbers that are absolutely wild, some that are easy. But I think it's going to be absolute chaos on the stream.
Nothing better than guys naming dudes and then arguing about who those dudes are the GOATs and who aren't. It's going to be good shit.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I will be back on Wednesday drafting on the FFPC Superflex contest, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, talking about how I didn't quite get the 1% outcome a couple of years ago when I finished top 6 over there. Tyler, what's cracking for you this week?
We'll go live on Typhel Tower, maybe Thursday, maybe not. It depends on our very sensitive comrade and schedules, but we'll be live this week. Don't you folks worry. And then hopefully have some time this weekend to get back in the drafters streets. Rob's doing that every Sunday morning, and it's
whoa. And most importantly, I'll be joining him this Sunday.
There we go.
Yep. Tom will be with me on Sunday drafting on drafters.
There we go. So it's just ripe for the pickings over there.
Absolutely.
Truly appreciate you joining us, Rob. This has been a fun team, fun conversation. Thanks to everyone who hung out in the chat tonight, and we will catch you all very soon.